Bardzo dziękuję.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to express my deep gratitude to Secretary General for this meeting today, for this opportunity to have talks directly after the meetings I had in the United States in recent days, and after my meeting with President Donald Trump. Before that, I also met his colleagues, Secretary of Defense, Mr. Heksev, and also General Kellogg, Special Envoy of President Donald Trump for Ukraine. But first and foremost, we discussed today with Secretary General about the situation in NATO and about all the issues mentioned by Secretary. Thank you for your wishes on the occasion on the 26th anniversary of Poland's accession to NATO. That was one of the most important events which Poland has experienced over the last 36 years, starting from 1990 or 1989, when we broke free from the Iron Curtain. And today, our membership of NATO is most important to the Polish people, especially given the current circumstances, when our security architecture in our part of the world, in our part of Europe, has changed so much. Speaking frankly, none of us, not only 25 years ago, 26 years ago, but even a couple of years ago, would have expected that we would be spending almost 5% of our GDP on defense. And this is the case today. We are the country which, looking at our GDP, is spending most on defense across the North Atlantic Alliance. And Polish people agree with it for one simple reason. All of them know that Russian imperialism is back, that Russia is attacking countries. Back in 2008, it attacked Georgia. In 2014, it attacked Ukraine, because in fact, that was when the war started. Minsk agreements and other efforts to calm down Vladimir Putin were done in vain. They did not bring results. And this is exemplified by the fact that in 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and this war is going on until today. So far, we have not managed to bring it to an end, which means that the threat is real. We can see it, especially in our region, on the eastern flank of NATO, in Poland, in the Baltic states, in Slovakia, in Romania, in the countries which have this war across their borders. So when we look at these countries, we can see that the increased defense spending in these states is considerable due to the perception of real threat. This is a threat felt by the people in these countries. Those countries are democratically approving the increased defense spending. However, there is one thing that we can be 100% sure of. If the entire NATO does not increase its defense spending, then unfortunately, perhaps Vladimir Putin will be willing to attack one more time, because we will have not enough deterrence. The thing is to make sure that NATO is capable of building strong enough deterrence potential, so that not only Russia, but no one else dares attack NATO countries, not only those which are close to Russia, but no other member state of NATO, because this is the core idea of the alliance, NATO at 360 degrees. We are mutually supporting each other in terms of building our security. And that is why 1 year ago, to commemorate the 25th anniversary of Poland joining NATO, I was invited by President Joe Biden to the White House. And on that occasion, I presented to President Biden and also vis-à-vis media, I proposed that we increase defense spending in NATO by making a joint decision to the level of minimum 3% of GDP. At that time, this idea was perceived with a distance. However, that issue was not discussed at the NATO summit, which was convened last year. However, I believe that now it is high time that we have made a hard, tough decision on this one. That is why I have come to Brussels here today. And I also gave an application to Mr. Secretary General so that this issue is one of the items discussed at the upcoming NATO summit in The Hague, so that the North Atlantic Alliance decides that at least 3% of GDP is adopted. Of course, more can be done if people want to, if other countries want to, but the basis is 3% of GDP. We should allocate it for defense, and we should do it immediately. This decision should be implemented immediately, not in 2030, for instance. The reason is very simple. Right? The situation is as follows. We cannot wait until 2030. These decisions have to be taken swiftly and efficiently, and we have to rebuild our military potential, because we do not need to explain it to anyone. We have repeated it dozens of times at different meetings within NATO and in other formats. It has turned out that Europe is totally unprepared for a war threat. We can see that, as a matter of fact, back in the 1990s, some people thought that the history came to an end, that there would be no more war, and that our military forces could be almost liquidated, that we could remove ammunition from our storages, and that we could deal with other things. And then when we had to help Ukraine, when we had to provide Ukraine swiftly with armaments so that it could defend itself against Russia, it turned out that we didn't have anything on stock to transfer to Ukraine. It turned out that all the ammunition that the European part of NATO has will be enough for a couple of days of war to defend Ukraine just for a few days. So this is something that we decisively need to change. In Poland, we immediately made a decision on this one. And that is why we are buying really in huge amounts armaments, military equipment from the United States and also in South Korea. The reason is very simple. Why we are buying from South Korea? Well, we saw that Korean partners are able to provide us with equipment which is very modern within a few months. Both K2 tanks, which we have already bought, as well as K9 howitzers, as well as Chungmo missile launchers. The deadlines were 1 year from the placement of order, but with other partners, they are giving us the time span of a couple of years or several years to deliver military equipment. Having said that, ladies and gentlemen, we have to rebuild our potential. So this is the major task, not only for Poland today, but generally for NATO. And that was the topic of our discussion also with Mr. Secretary General. So we also need to rebuild the defense industry in Europe. This is also one of the branch of our economy. This also generates jobs for the people. So let us use this opportunity. Let us give jobs to people. Let us make our economy stronger through spending funds on military production, because the times that we are living in tell us that this is not only necessary, but it is also indispensable. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for mentioning Poland's contribution to the defense of Ukraine. Yes, indeed. We are a country which, right from the start of the Russian aggression against Ukraine, especially the start of the full-scale aggression, is a route for providing supplies to Ukraine. So we are absolutely a background for Ukraine, not only in terms of logistics, but also we are supporting Ukraine in all other things, because Poland is the place where refugees from Ukraine fled to. We were the first country to which they fled, and also all the transports go through our country. With humanitarian assistance, military assistance to Ukraine is transferred through Poland, and also we are the ones who are taking a risk, unfortunately, every day as a state, as Polish people. We had missiles which interfered with our airspace. They also hit the territory of Poland. 2 of our citizens, unfortunately, died, were victims of the explosion of such missile. Russian jets infringe our airspace and the airspace of NATO. And at least once a week, we have to scramble our jets of NATO, in order to protect our skies. So, as a matter of fact, we are shouldering this risk of war every day. Today, what we have to do is to bring the war in Ukraine to an end. But a very important thing is that the achieved peace is just and lasting. A lasting peace to us Poles means a peace which will never be infringed by Russia. This is the definition of a lasting peace for us. And this is what we care most about. That is why we stand ready to support Ukraine. That is what we are doing all the time. We are ready to join various missions of support for Ukraine, which will be proposed. However, I also encourage you to look at it in a reasonable way. So the conditions of the future ceasefire, hopefully peace, should be developed in such a way that we are able to reconstruct Ukraine. Keeping peace and order in Ukraine should be possible. And to have that, we need a Euro-Atlantic cooperation. That is why, in my conversation with Secretary General, we said what is of fundamental importance is to keep the bond between the United States and Europe. And we hope that this stalemate in the relations between the leaders of the United States and Ukraine will be overcome. I have encouraged on a couple of times our colleague and partner, Volodymyr Zelensky, that he should calmly return to the negotiating table, sit down at this negotiating table with President Trump, because this is indispensable for Ukraine, so that it can be saved, so that it can be supported in this work of bringing the war to an end, in this work of rebuilding Ukraine. We have to do it together as the North Atlantic Alliance and as the transatlantic community, Euro-American community. I believe that this is the right direction. And we see eye to eye on this one, myself and Secretary General. We believe that we need to search for an agreement, but what is indispensable? It is indispensable to make sure that NATO is also mutually credible, and to have that, we need to increase defense spending within NATO. And this thing has to be put on the table in a very strong way at the upcoming NATO summit. Ladies and gentlemen, we in Poland believe in NATO. We firmly believe in this community. That is why I encourage Secretary General to come to Poland, also on the occasion of the 26th anniversary of Poland's joining NATO, because the presence of Secretary General in Poland also always stresses the NATO bond, the Euro-Atlantic bond. This is the North Atlantic Alliance, and people in Poland know this is the name of this alliance. It strengthens the feeling of security. It reassures people. Every visit of you, Mr. Secretary General, every visit to NATO units deployed to our country and in the neighborhood reassures people along NATO's eastern flank. And today, in the era of Russian aggression against Ukraine, is of particular importance. So thank you, Secretary General, for this meeting today. I see it as an element of preparations, our joint preparations for the upcoming NATO summit in The Hague, which I hope will be of a breakthrough landmark character. It will let us build this renewed bond, Euro-Atlantic bond, because today, I believe this is what we urgently need. Thank you very much.